Thank you. Before I start, I just want to give a special thanks to the Occupyeugenevideo people. I don't know if anybody in that group is here yet. I live in the Whitaker neighborhood, so every day going back and forth from work to home, we pass by encampment and went a bunch of times to bring food or give support. But every night I knew that I was going home to a warm house, and everybody in that park was staying outside day after day, night after night in the cold and rain, and we're doing it for all of us, all the rest of us. So I want to make a special thanks to Occupyeugenevideo. Tomorrow's the second anniversary of Citizens United, which is a decision that opens up our country to unlimited amounts of corporate money in politics. But there's no way to undo that decision without doing the Supreme Court's insistence that corporations are people, that money is speech, and therefore them spending hundreds of millions of dollars on 30-second ads needs to be protected in the same way that any individual giving their opinion needs to be protected. To say just briefly, historically this is not what corporations are or were supposed to be. The first corporations in the United States were corporations built to build a railway. Corporations basically is a legal creation that is designed to do two things. One is to enable a bunch of different investors to pool all their money together in a single thing. So the first corporations were the railways because it took more money than any person or any family had. And the second is to shield those investors from responsibility for their actions. Before there were corporations, an individual owned a factory, and if there were unsafe conditions in the factory and somebody got hurt, that person, that owner, that family was responsible. They could go to jail. They would lose their money. They would be bankrupt. Corporations shield owners so that no matter what happens, the individuals who are the owners and the managers and the decision makers are not personally responsible. That's what a corporation is. It was never designed to be people or to participate in politics. And the truth is, the corporations don't really want to be people, or at least they don't want to be people like us. What they want is what any pig would want, which is to get all the privileges and none of the responsibilities. They want to be persons for giving money to politicians in order to shape our laws. And they want to be persons to say whatever they want without being responsible for their actions. There was a famous case with Nike put out all kinds of statements and propaganda saying, no, our subcontractors in Southeast Asia do not mistreat our workers. And in California, there's a law against false advertising, and there was a citizen lawsuit that sued Nike saying you're advertising false because you're not telling the truth about the conditions in your factories. Nike responded not by saying, oh yes, we are telling the truth. They said, yeah, we were lying. But you know what, when we were lying, we weren't acting as a corporation. We were acting as a person, and that was free speech, because individuals can say whatever they want. So corporations want to be persons for being able to help shape our laws and being able to lie to the people. But then in lots of other cases, they don't want to be citizens. They don't want to be citizens like us. Many companies, for instance, Jana, famous for shipping tens of thousands of American jobs overseas and for employing hundreds of lawyers to make sure that the company doesn't contribute a dime to the public good. They pay zero taxes the last few years. General Electric, like many of the biggest corporations in the country, earns most of its money overseas. Now, even after Citizens United, we have laws in America that people who are not citizens of the country, foreigners, cannot contribute money to try to control or influence our elections. So what is GE? Is it American because its headquarters is here? Is it American because it spells its name in English? And of course, these corporations are not just trying to influence our laws, they're trying to influence every country's laws. You've got to know that they give money to influence the elections to do the same thing they're doing here every place. And in those countries, when their governments come to them and say, oh, but wait a minute, you're American, so you can't give money to our elections. No, we're not GE. We're GE Britain. Or we're GE Mexico. Right? So they want to do something that we can't do. I can only be a citizen of one country and participate in one country's politics. They want to be like citizens plus. They want to be like gold card citizens. They don't want to be schlub citizens like us. They want to be able to turn it on and turn it off, and be persons sometimes and not other times. When Union Carbide killed 2,000 people in India by venting toxic fumes into their neighborhood, then they didn't want to be a person. No owner, no manager, no decision maker from Union Carbide ever personally faced a day in jail or a sentence in fines, because then they were a corporation. Walmart, for instance, faces class action discrimination states in 32 of the 50 states for discriminating against women and illegally taking money out of people's paychecks by forcing them to work overtime without pay. Now, if I, as a real, as like the normal physical person, if I took money out of somebody's paycheck, that would be a felony. I would go to jail, and I would be barred from voting or participating in politics in most states. The Walton family won't spend a day in jail and can participate in politics all they want, because then they're not persons. Then they're corporations, right? So what they want is to be able to turn personhood on and off at their convenience and to our detriment. And what we want is to turn it off in the one place where it most doesn't belong, where it's most destructive and most obscene, which is in influencing the laws of our country. And you know, their participation, the way they want to participate in politics, goes against the most fundamental idea of democracy. The thing that is radical, not to make more of it than it is, but the thing that is radical about the idea of democracy is this: that in almost everything we do, from when we wake up to when we go to sleep, our lives really are governed by a world which is $1 the money rules. What kind of house you live in, what clothes you wear, what your life is like is governed by money. And then there's one realm that's supposed to be one person, one vote. That it's not the money rules. This is the radical idea of democracy. And the point of corporate participation in politics, of unlimited corporate participation in politics, is to kill this idea, to undermine this potential of democracy by buying politicians through campaign contributions, and by making the rest of us stupid through massive unregulated spending on 30-second propaganda ads. Democracy is not just defined by having fair elections and not having people stuck with ballot boxes. It's defined by how much of our lives is subject to popular control. What they want us to have is like a democracy of the game. After they take care of everything that's important to us, they'll let us decide the things that they don't care about. They have bought politicians to set what the tax code is to let us name the state burden. We can elect whoever we want, as long as we understand that they'll never do something that's against the people who control their re-elections. And we saw this in the Citizens United case. When Citizens United came down, 80% of the country thought it was the wrong thing, by all kinds of public opinion polls. And yet there was no chance of getting a bill through Congress to undo it. Even the bill that the Democrats put forth, the Disclose Act, which didn't undo Citizens United, which just said, okay, you can spend as much as you want, unlimited sums, but you just have to say where the money came from, got killed. So you say, well, we live in a democracy. How does it happen in a democracy that you have something that 80% of the country is for and is DOA in Congress? And the answer is what everybody knows, that the politicians are bought by the people who pay for their re-elections, and they are more loyal to their donors than they are to the voters. That's the system that we will have forever. That will be our future if we don't undo this. Sorry to be kind of down on this, but we got to change this event, right? This is what they want. We can elect whoever we want, but it's like a little game. You guys get to play over here in the space that's left over after we ensure what we want, and they hope that we'll be stupid enough to think that that's self-governance. And what do they want? What is their agenda? One of the things that's striking when you look at corporate participation in politics is, unlike real people, corporations have no diversity in their views. They don't change their minds. They don't have variety in what they're for. They're for a very, very clear agenda. Right? At the federal level, they want to make sure that people who make their money buying and selling stocks on Wall Street pay a lower tax rate than the rest of us. They want to pass free trade treaties that are opposed, like Citizens United, by a majority of both parties, and then they get easier for American jobs to be shipped abroad to the cheapest country in the world and tell Americans back home we have to cut our wages to be globally competitive. They want to give tax breaks to the wealthiest among us while cutting schools, health care, child care, and pensions for everybody else. This isn't a political philosophy, unless the philosophy is robbery. As Thomas Jefferson said, quote, "The selfish spirit of commerce feels no passion or principle but that of gain." And Jefferson was one of the ones who first spoke out, this is 200 years ago, saying at the birth of the country what he was worried about. He says, "I hope we shall crush in its birth the aristocracy of our moneyed corporations, which dares to challenge our government to a trial of strength and bid defiance to the laws of our country." When you listen to what the corporate lobbies say, they talk a lot about freedom. We have to be for free enterprise, and we don't want the federal government on our backs, We need local control. We need to be able to decide everything locally. But when you look at what they do, not just in the federal government, but in the states, it's not for local control. It's just for corporate control. There's an organization some of you may know called the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC. What ALEC does is bring together the biggest corporations in the country with state legislators in every state in the country and corporate funded think tanks that put out their white papers. The exchange is the corporations give the legislators money and the legislators carry their water and lobby for what they want. There's a long, long list of what they do, but in many, many cases what they do is to shut down the ability of citizens or state legislatures or local city governments to challenge corporate prerogatives. Alex, for instance, got money from polluters and passed laws making it harder for citizens to take polluters to court. Got money from drug companies and passed laws making it illegal for a city to initiate a program importing cheaper drugs from Canada. Got money from technology companies and passed laws forbidding local cities from providing free broadband internet service to the people who live there. Got money from low-wage, no-benefit employers and passed laws blocking cities from mandating living wages or paid sick leave. Sick leave, for instance, there are 30 million people in America who have not a day of sick leave coming to them. And it's both a human rights issue and a public health issue. They include school cafeteria workers, waiters and waitresses, a lot of occupations that will have to be on. These 30 million Americans, when they're sick, go to work sick, unless they're totally unable to walk. When their kids are sick, they have to leave them at home alone or risk losing their jobs. Several cities, including San Francisco and Milwaukee, adopted a law that gives everybody a right to a few days paid sick leave every year. Corporate lobbying in ALEC works to kill this, and successfully in Milwaukee. They passed a law in the state legislature in Wisconsin overturning Milwaukee's paid sick leave ordinance, despite the fact that it was passed by popular vote, and banning any city or council of Wisconsin from ever passing a sick leave ordinance. This is the legislative agenda of the 1%. I was asked to come here and talk about corporations or the Citizens United or unions. I don't think it's primarily a union issue. I would say that unions are first on the chopping block, not only because obviously companies supposedly want to pay lower wages and benefits, and on average in America, if you take somebody, two people who work in the same industry, same age, same education level, one has a union and one doesn't, the person with the union makes about 15% more in wages and has a 20 to 25% better chance of getting health insurance or pension through their job. So corporate lobbyists don't want to pay that much, and they don't want to have to negotiate with anybody. But they also look at unions as, in fact, their single biggest institutional political opponents and political counterweight, not just to how much do people make in the workplace, but on almost all of their economic agenda. The labor movement is greatly shrunken, but there's still about 14 million people in America who are members of unions, and that's a lot of people who are contributing to politics, both by financial contributions, by phone calls, by door knocking, by having their own channels of education that aren't the mass media. And even though in 2010 unions were outspent by corporations 20 to 1 in federal elections, it's still by far the single most potent force when you look at who's on each side of single-payer health care, of minimum wage, of free or fair trade, of regulations about how to work safe, of tax fairness, of school funding for kids, or of Social Security for when we get old. It's the labor movement that is by far the biggest political obstacle from the point of view of corporate lobbies to doing what they want. So they're out to destroy the labor movement, I think, is one of their top goals. But it's not really about that. The unions are the obstacle to them, but what the real goal is to destroy the vision of democracy that was established by Jefferson and others, to get rid of the radical idea that you could have one person, one vote in an area that would actually matter, that would actually have control over our lives, and to have the system of $1, one vote be something that controls not just our commercial lives, but the way we make our laws as well. That's what's at stake here, and that's what we have to be here today and every day for as long as it takes to overturn this decision. Thank you.